Hello, everyone. This is criminal profiler Pat Brown. And today, this case of Philip Shue, it is, well, it is what people call bizarre, puzzling, makes no sense. How could this be? In 48 hours, I did a show on it, and I have a link in the description where you can see it for free. It is called The Curious Case of Colonel Shue. I'm going to tell you the basics of the case, sort of the 48 hours, the way they presented it. And then I'm going to get into some things that 48 hours kind of didn't. All right. So it's going to be very, very interesting. First, I want to welcome everybody who is here in the chat room. I think I said hello to most everyone who is here. If I missed your name, I'm sorry. Glad you're here. Somebody's talking about my technical difficulties already. Do I have any? If you can see and hear me, we're doing good so far. Yes, and somebody mentioned my subscription numbers have risen, and they have. I am presently at 59,941, so I am 59 off of 60,000. And it's all because I did that little short video on the fake true crime channel. And when I did that video, I really wasn't planning to get a lot of subscribers or money off of it. I just did it because I ran into it and I thought it was ridiculous. And I wanted to warn people. And it's just a short video. But apparently it's very popular. And people who have gone to that channel and been fooled by these completely fake true crime stories, they're like, oh my God, I saw that. I thought it was real. And other people, I saw it and I knew immediately it was fake. But then I got more subscribers, I think, because there are actually people out here who want to go to a channel with a real person, not AI and not complete fake stories, and a real channel with a professional analyzing cases. So turned out well turned out really well. So anyway, 48 hours is a solid show. Sometimes, sometimes I've liked some of the 48-hour shows very much. This one I have issues with. Okay, so let me get to the story because it is crazy and it is bizarre. And wait till you hear it if you haven't heard it yet. All right, so I'm going to read this little thing just because it's a good dramatic opening I found on Medium. April 16th, 2003. Seemed a typical day on Interstate 10. This is in Texas. Traffic was moving well out of San Antonio, Texas, and nothing was amiss. That was until suddenly and violently, a tan-colored Mercury Tracer swerved straight into the median. The car bounced for well over 1,000 feet, became airborne, and then smashed back down onto the highway. Yet still, it wasn't over. Landing correctly on its wheels, the vehicle continued to cruise down the road for miles before veering off to the right and smashing into a cluster of trees. Approaching the scene on Johns Road, Sheriff's Department deputies found the driver deceased. Well, pretty good chance of that. And I'll show you a couple other pictures of that vehicle so you can see that it wasn't in good shape after it smashed into the old tree. So that's one. And here's another version. See, the driver's side is completely smashed in. All right, so... And they found the deceased in there, seemingly died from massive head injuries. Wearing full military fatigues, he would later be identified as Air Force Colonel Philip Shue, age 54. Then it goes into, however, doubts about what truly happened began to be raised right there at the scene. Now, all right, so he's driving the car. He's alone in the car. The witnesses say they didn't see any brake lights when he went off the highway and smashed into the old tree here. He wasn't braking. He was going full tilt toward that tree with the intention, it appears, of smashing into the tree. When the car was having issues on the road, the driver, which is Shue, kept driving, and he drove past a police car, places where he could have stopped to get help. Yeah, actually passed by the road to his home and kept going and then smashed into a tree. So what happened was his death was labeled a suicide because that he was the only one in the car. He was in control of the car, and then he chose to. He still controlled the car when he veered off the road and smashed into the tree. No brake lights used, no effort to get help along the way, as if he was having some kind of medical emergency. So they labeled it a suicide. Now, this is where it gets complicated. All right. So the injuries to his head definitely smashed into a tree, smashed his head in. But there were some interesting things about him in that vehicle. All right, let me tell you what they were. All right, so in the vehicle, when they found him, they found that he had duct tape wrapped around his wrists and hanging off, duct tape on each wrist hanging off, and he had duct tape around his boots. They also found he had a gash in his chest from a knife, some kind of sharp object gashed his chest, and his nipples had been removed. You heard me right. And a piece of his pinky finger was also missing. They didn't know whether that happened with the crash or not, and I don't know why they couldn't determine that, whether when he crashed something cut it and then smushed it, so they couldn't see that it was done in the crash, but they didn't know whether it was done in the crash or prior to the crash. So there are some interesting questions. As okay, we got it that he drove into a tree, but why are his nipples missing? And he has a gash in his chest, a cut in his chest. Why has he got duct tape on him? So that looks a little odd, doesn't it? So this is where the story gets interesting. So he was married twice, and his second wife was not happy with the findings. Okay, Sarah says here, contained and tortured. Okay, this is what the second wife believes. And when you're watching, it wasn't a low impact. I think he hit it at 60 miles an hour. It was, yeah. And yes, it was his car. So yes, that's all his. Yeah, he was about to retire. This is correct. Okay. So let me give you the basics of, just want to tell you about the second wife here. So she's the one that's like, you got to be kidding me. How could you say this was a suicide? It makes no sense. Why does she say that? Okay, it's because she and her husband, he was retiring from the Army, I guess, Lackland Air Force, sorry, Lackland Air Force Base. I think I put that wrong in my description. I'll have to fix it. I put Army. Oops. Anyway, he was in the Air Force for many years. He was a psychiatrist. And he had been over in Bosnia, and he'd done all kinds of work, and his patients loved him. But he had gotten to this point where he was ready to retire. So he was retiring, and they just put down, this is a very expensive house. They just put down, I think it was like $600,000 or something on this house. Expensive house in Alabama. He had gotten he was ready to do a privatized job in Alabama. So he was gonna finish his retire out, and then they were moving to Alabama to start their new life in their new house with his new job. And she says, you got to be kidding me. So we just put, the day before we put the money down on the house, he decides to kill himself? And she doesn't believe him. Now, if you're watching 48 Hours, you will then see her theory on this case. She is a second wife. Here they are. This is what when they were younger. I think they were together for like 15 years or something like that. But the woman you see here on the right, that's his first wife. Now, a little older, mind you. They were married 20 years. So Philip and Nancy Shue were married for 20 years. Supposedly not an overly happy marriage. They had a son, and then they divorced, and he later met, I remember what her name is now. Let me go back to the story here. I got to look at my notes. Her name is, sorry. I've lost her name. Okay, what was her name? Tracy. Okay, Tracy. All right. So they were married for 15 years. So it wasn't a brand new marriage. So 20 years with her and then 15 years with her. And there's no issue about cheating or anything like that going on. Like he cheated with her, during his marriage with her. No, I didn't see any of that. So they just simply seemed to have a marriage that didn't work out, got divorced after 20 years. And then he met a woman he seemed to like, and she seemed to adore him. And they had a happy 15-year marriage, at least according to her. All right. So she believes that he was murdered because she's like, you got to be kidding that you would come up with suicide with the injuries to his body, not his head, that he died in a car crash. That's true. But she believes he was tortured. He somehow, when he left home that morning, it was about, I think she said 5:30. And he said he was going to go into the office, do some paperwork. So he was going in an hour early. He never got to the office. And 2 hours later, he was found dead on the side of the road. He was coming from the direction of the office, which is interesting. So where was he in between the home and not getting to the office, but turning around and coming back toward their house, and ending up passing her house and smashing into a tree? So she believes that he was somehow abducted along the way and tortured. And then he escaped because he was the only one in the car. So somehow he escaped his bond. He was bound to something. He escaped and got to his car and got in it and was driving away. Of course, you wonder why he didn't stop where the police were, or why he didn't go get help. Why would he drive into a tree then? This is where the things get a little muddy. But she believes the ex-wife had something to do with it. Why? Because she had an insurance policy on Philip, her ex-husband, for $1 million. Now, some people ask, why the heck would she, being divorced, have a $1 million policy on her husband? Apparently, that has something to do with how does this work? That she was a military wife for 20 years, and sometimes there's issues over when people get divorced, the wife then ends up losing all the benefits in the military, and so lawyers often find a way that they can at least collect on a life insurance policy. I'm not familiar with this stuff, so don't quote me on any of it. I don't know. If you have an understanding of this, fine. But people say, well, she's not even married. Why would she have an insurance policy? But somehow in the divorce, she got to keep the insurance policy on him. And then supposedly there was another part of the policy, another policy for their son. Okay. And I'll get to that interesting thing where the son is actually removed, which is fascinating to me. But anyway, she has this $1 million policy. And it is stated, she states that that in just in a short time after the actual accident, that her husband had been receiving creepy letters, not from her, but from somebody who said they knew that she and her new husband were plotting to kill him. And I will read you what those notes say. So, and if on 48 Hours, you will see, they're talking to her all about how he got this letters. And let me read you what the letter says. So there were theoretically two. The first one is, Dear Dr. Shue, please read this letter. You may be in danger. I'm writing because I remember you as such a kind and caring doctor. And I can't sit by and not help you. Oh, sorry, let me reread this. And I can't just sit by and not help you by telling you what I know. I'll try to keep it short so you're certain to read it. I don't know, is it an attention span issue? But keeping it short is always a smart idea when you're trying to make a point. I'm kind of long-winded myself, and people sometimes tell me that. Anyway, a friend of mine who worked with, name deleted, your ex-wife's husband told me some scary things. S-K-A-R-Y, scary. I don't know, name deleted, that person, or your ex-wife, myself. Sorry, I don't even know her name. My friend told me they wish you were dead so they could collect life insurance. I don't understand why they would have life insurance on you, but that's what my friend told me. My friend thinks they may actually be planning something. I don't know if they would actually hurt you, but please be careful. I had to write. If I didn't, I couldn't bear B-A-R-E, the thought of something bad happening to you that I could have prevented by telling you what I heard. And that was the message. And then there was a second one. The last message Colonel Shue received from the anonymous friend was this short and cryptic note. The plan is now delayed, but not canceled. Be careful. I can't identify myself because they may find out and stop letting information slip. Okay. So she says in the 48 hours, he told me he got these letters. And I'm a little confused by that because they're typewritten letters. Where do they come from? I don't understand. The 48 hours doesn't go into that. Why don't you show the letters that he got? Do they, can you actually not show them? And I don't think these are the actual letters. I think these are typed up by the show. This is one of the things that bothers me about the shows. When they do these documentaries, they don't tell you what you need to know. They should say here, actual letter, or they should say transcribed. It's very vague as to where this letter came from. There's no talk about it coming in the post. There's no talk about it being in paper form, or if it was in paper form, where did it show up? And it's very vague. And I can't find good information on it. But I will get into more of that later. So anyway, interesting letters. So she thinks, well, he got these letters saying he was in danger from his ex-wife. Okay, so Leslie says the letter is dramatic, seems fake. Seems that way to me too. That doesn't seem real. Do they exist? Don't know. Someone is disguising their Someone is disguising their identity. Perhaps. So who would that person be that is doing that? If it's a real letter, why do they need to disguise it? They're saying because if they let you know who I am, if I tell you who I am, wait a minute, I can't identify myself because they may find out. Now, if he identifies himself to Philip Shue, and he says here, he was your kind and caring doctor. So if he's claiming that he must have been his patient at some time, and he can't identify him because if he identifies him to Philip Shue, other people are going to find out. Well, how is that? They're going to stop giving information. That makes no sense. That makes zero sense. Because if you tell him who you are, unless he goes and rats it out around the neighborhood, tells everybody, hey, so-and-so just told me my wife is going to kill me. How would anybody else know and stop talking? And why are these people talking around him? Who talks about killing people are just, by the way, you know what I know? So-and-so say he and his wife want to kill. And then he's waiting for information. And then it says here, the plan is now delayed, but not canceled. So who is this person has all this inside information on people plotting a murder? It does not sound real to me. So the question is, yes, this too. Oh, this is good, Sarah. Misspelling, yes. Misspellings that nobody ever makes. Nobody makes those misspellings. So that seems done on purpose. Distancing language, vague, absolutely. All of that is true. It doesn't, it's questionable. Let's see. All right, so now let's go on. So that's why she suspects that her husband was in danger. Now, if you go to the in the show, also this interesting thing happens. So she goes to court and she is trying like heck to get this. It's labeled a suicide. And she says, my husband was murdered over and over in 48 hours. My husband is murdered. And I believe, I can't say it's his ex-wife and their husband, but I believe it is. Supposedly they had an alibi, but hey, that's also vague. And then there's only this one court appearance that the ex-wife ends up in. And she had said to them previously, I'm not in any way further involved. I've never been involved with this. And she says here when she's in the court, I refuse to answer this question on the grounds that any answer might incriminate me. She says this 20 times. Refuses to cooperate. And she basically, she says, my lawyer told me to do this. And so a lot of people think that makes her look very guilty of being involved. Or is it just that she doesn't want to get further sucked into this, whatever it is? And she says, hey, I didn't do anything. And this crazy woman keeps accusing me of crap, because she doesn't want me to get the $1 million, I guess. She did get the $1 million, by the way. So that still was hers. However, the judge, this was in, I think this was in the civil, I think this was during the civil part where it was interesting. She was trying to sue the insurance companies for not doing something about, since her husband was threatened, why did the ex-wife still have insurance policy? Anyway, the judge says that Shue's death is a homicide. That's what he decides. However, the official cause of death remains a suicide, and they refuse to change it. The police refused to change it. I think the state's attorney said they don't have to change it because who the hell is this judge to say it was a homicide? So anyway, that's the gist of this case. Now, I want to get to the people involved in the 48 hours and what their conclusions are. She wants to cash out and be done with it. Well, wouldn't you? If you're going to get that $1 million, you're probably going to want to do that too. Can't blame me on that. Anybody on that. So, all right. Now, let's go to. First of all, I want to tell you about the first person who did the autopsy and what his conclusion was, and that was Vincent DeMaio. All right. So Vincent DeMaio. Let's see where I had. Okay, hold on a second. I gotta find it. Sorry, it's somewhere here. Let me find Vincent DeMaio's. Okay. Oh, this is the day I lose everything. It really is. Hold on one sec. I purposely copied it so I wouldn't lose it, and I've lost it. Yes, I have. Okay. I'm going to have to go back to the report. Okay. The psychological, where the heck is my report? This is, you have to jinx me with the technical difficulties things, because now I'm having all the technical difficulties and it's really pissing me off. It really is. Now I'm also missing something else that was supposed to be here. Hold on one second. That's where that went. Okay. I had to fix something that was missing. All right. Nope, that's not what I want yet. All right. Yes, I'm having technical difficulties today. So I don't know what happened to the thing I had saved, but somehow it did not save. But I'm going to read it to you. And it is from Vincent DeMaio, very famous forensic pathologist. He did the first autopsy on the case. And Cyril Wecht did the second autopsy on the case. He's the one you see in the show. This is the original detective. He says they screwed up the case. They didn't do a proper investigation. They never went very, very far, and therefore they didn't do enough. And he says he now believes it's a murder. Cyril Wecht, who did die this year in May, very, very sad, but he was 91, I believe, so he did a pretty good job of hanging around a while. He also believed it was a homicide. And then we have Joe Mora. He's in the show. He's the investigator for 48 hours. And he says it's a homicide. So we have these three, the detective, we have Wecht, and we have Mora, all saying they think it was murder and not a suicide. And the show pretty much says the suicide thing is ludicrous. But there's going to be a but here. All right. I'm going to read you from the autopsy when I find it after I lost it. Okay. Let me roll through here. It's a 20-page document, so I have to find what I want to find as far as the autopsy goes. All right, here we go. All right, so let me tell you a little bit more about the death scene evidence. Shue suffered obviously fatal head injuries in the crash, and resuscitation was not attempted. Let me go back to the first picture just so you can see or not the first picture, but the picture of him in the vehicle. This one. All right. Resuscitation was not attempted. He was dead. Emergency workers noted that there was duct tape wrapped around Shue's wrists and ankles. The ends of the tape were loose, with 4 to 5 inches dangling from each extremity. They blurred it out here. I think I actually found one that wasn't blurred out as much. Where was that picture? No, don't have it. Maybe I decided not to show it. I'm not sure. Dangling. So the tape was dangling. In addition, the blouse of his camouflage uniform was open and bloody. Both of his nipples had been excised with a sharp instrument, and he had a deep mid-sternal incision clearly visible on his chest like that. The distal joint of his left pinky finger was missing, and I suppose it was actually just so much, a tiny bit of it. I don't know if it's the whole or that, but I don't know. That was missing. Neither that part of his finger nor the excised tissue from his nipples was ever located. There was a working cell phone in the car. Telephone records have confirmed that no calls were made from the phone in the period prior to the crash. Again, something kind of odd. If he was seeking help, you would think he'd call for help. However, Tracy Shue, whose neighbor recovered the phone after the trash, indicated that it was a clamshell-style phone and that there was blood on the inside. Shue had $47 in his pocket, but his wallet was missing. The left rear pocket of his trousers had been cut. The cut only extended, however, to the outer material and would not have allowed the wallet to fall out. Items of interest found in the car included a straight razor, 2 small pocket knives, and a latex glove. DNA analysis revealed the presence of Shue's blood on one of the pocket knives, the glove, and the steering wheel of the car. No blood that did not come from Shue was identified. So there was no DNA from anybody else in that vehicle. Based on crime scene photos, the glove looked as if it had never been worn. Only one knife was identified in the crime scene photos. It was a Swiss Army type knife that was not likely to be sharp enough to create the incisions on his body, or maybe this. Kendall County investigators also reported there was an unopened package of small gauge needles in the glove box of the car, but these were not seen in the photos. So somebody did really crappy photo work. All right, so you see all this weird stuff, right? However, the knife that supposedly cut him, the glove that might have been used, because his fingerprints were not on the tape, nor were anybody else's fingerprints. But there was no evidence of a glove being used, except there was a glove in the car, latex one, which did not look like it had been put on a hand. And there were some needles, and the needles are interesting because there's a theory that he had lidocaine in his system, and lidocaine could give some numbing issue. Wife said he had some stuff he put on his chest, but that's not the same. What was in that stuff was not the same thing that was found in the lab report. So it would have to be the lidocaine if he was using for pain. If he was committing suicide, using for pain, killing some pain, it would have to be done with a needle. And they didn't find any needle marks. And the needles in the car, the syringes were full, enclosed and hadn't been opened. So interesting stuff in the car. All right. Now, when the first autopsy was done, this was by DeMaio. And he said this. Shue was wearing this T-shirt. It was still tucked in at the waist. That's interesting. Usually when you're being abducted and pulled around and you're fighting and all this stuff is going on, your T-shirt doesn't usually remain tucked in. That's interesting. The tear, there was a tear from the neckline to a point 2 inches above the waist. So it was a tear down the middle. The tear was described as being more consistent with being cut than torn. And that's pretty much where the cut in his chest was. The shirt was bloody from the chest downwards, but not on the shoulders. So blood went this way, but did not go this way. The bottom portion of the outer shirt was cut or torn and had buttons missing. Okay. There was massive head and brain trauma. There were 2 large areas of abrasion contusion on the forehead and large lacerations on both sides of the face. Well, that's why he smashed the car. So all of that killed him. I'll continue. The distal joint of the left pinky finger was amputated. All right. So theoretically it was here. In addition, there were multiple small contusions around both hands. It was not clear whether the finger amputation was part of the trauma of the accident. The incisions on the chest and around the nipples were noted. The incision around the right nipple was noted to have more regular borders than that of the left. The incisions completely removed the areola, but were quite superficial, in parts only going to partial skin thickness. Scratch abrasions were consistent with hesitation marks on the chest incision. Like somebody was like 1, 2, 3, I'm going to do it. Or a murderer. Well, that's very unusual for a murderer to have hesitation marks, unless he's playing with the guy. It's like, look what I'm going to do. Look what I'm going to do. So you can't rule that out. Look what I'm going to do. But no, there are not hesitation marks around the nipples. There were no wounds identified as consistent with a struggle. The only evidence, then it goes in natural disease. Okay. The autopsy report included a conclusion of manner of death being suicide. So he says there's no sign of any kind of defensive wounds or any kind of fighting going on that you would think a guy who'd been abducted and tortured would have some of these things going, and that these things aren't evident yet. Whatever is used to cause the injuries was not in his car. So where were they? Yeah. All right. So the second autopsy was done by Wecht. All right. He concluded the information does not indicate that his death was merely a suicide. Rather, it is suggestive that another person may have been involved in his death. And this, by the way, Wecht was hired by the wife. And so I always am a little cautious about when people are hired by families. I think a lot of times they want to please the family because the family's told them a sad story. And I always wonder whether it influences what they say. Also, whether the money influences what they say. So he said another person may have been involved. And he recommended the case be listed as pending further investigation. Okay. If no further significant information is obtained, he recommended that be listed as undetermined. And a bunch of, Dr. West cited a bunch of things. He complains that, which is interesting because this is not really part of an autopsy. He's going outside of autopsy. The jurisdiction of autopsy and what he's saying to me are two different things. Listen to what he says. The original report described Shue as making a deliberate turn off the highway. West noted that eyewitnesses did not use that terminology, but merely said that the turn was sudden and that they did not see brake lights. West maintained the possibility that Shue was unable to control the car as a result of his injuries and that it could have left the road by accident. I think that's not part of an autopsy. The original autopsy report said there was a working cell phone in the car. He stated he had not heard whether the cell phone actually worked. Again, this is not the autopsy. He's going into investigative work here. He thought that the presence of duct tape with no fingerprints on it was suggestive of another person involved in Shue's death. He cited that the absence of gloves in the car to support that position, and the lack of a weapon in the car, and so on and so forth. Finally, Wecht noted life events that he did not think supported suicide in this case. He was retiring from the military. He was accepted into a forensic psychiatry fellowship program, purchased a new home, and a lack of suicidal ideation or significant depression at the time of his death. So most of that's not to do with the autopsy at all. It's all to do with the investigation and what he thinks all the other things mean. So he wants it to be labeled, well, undetermined, essentially, at least not suicide. Now, I'm going to go to what I think may be true. All those factors do indeed increase stress. You're talking about stay in your lane, bro. Well, I've been told that too. Why on earth would somebody cut off their own nipples? Who does that to themselves? And that's a good question, Kim. Who does that? That's pretty weird. But on the other hand, ask this question. If the ex-wife wanted to kill him, why would she be pulling him off the road, somehow abducting him off the road, take him someplace and torture him? Why would she be torturing him if she wants him dead? What's the point? Wouldn't it be like smarter to fix his brakes so the brakes fail, or he gets knifed in an alley, you know, so that it looks like he got killed in a robbery. And now, by the way, she was still going to get her payout, whether it was suicide or not. It didn't make any difference. Whatever his death was, murder, suicide, whatever, she's still going to get the payout. People think because it's a suicide, she would not get paid. That's not true. Usually suicide has to be within, from what I read, within 2 years of the time you get that policy. So in other words, you can't get the policy and kill yourself the next day. Then you don't get payout. But if you got the policy and suicide wasn't in your plans, and 2 years goes by and somebody, person does commit suicide, you still get a payout on it. So the torture thing makes no sense to me at all. When if you're going to call this a homicide, why wouldn't he just kill the guy? Why would you torture him? What's the point? And then he escapes. How is he going to escape? If he's tied, I don't know how he was bound, because was he bound to a chair, like 2 hands here and 2 feet there, and he somehow managed to escape? How did he do that? And when he was escaping, remember, this is a 2-hour period of time. So somebody took him someplace and kept him there, taped him up to a chair or something, and then tortured him for no reason whatsoever. And then they let him escape. Why would they let him escape? I mean, if he's inside, if they were there with him, I mean, it's not like they decided we're coming back later today. I mean, they would have his vehicle there, and he wouldn't show up at work. People be looking for him. What, they're going to keep him there all day long if they're planning to kill him? It makes no sense. So they're in this room with him, and somehow he escapes anyway. And then when he gets into his vehicle, somehow he gets to his vehicle without being shot or beaten down. He gets in his vehicle, drives off. He doesn't seek help from anybody. He doesn't go to the police. Instead, he runs around on the highway for a long time, passes the road to his home, and smashes into a tree. This is not sensible. It's very bizarre as far as that makes no sense. Another thing is very interesting. I want to say this about the wife before I go to the crucial piece of information in this case, which 48 Hours did not want you to know. The wife here. All right. She is a second wife. She says, let's take a look at things she says, that he's been perfectly psychologically healthy their entire marriage, that the only reason he had any anxiety or anything was because of these letters telling him that his wife is trying to kill him. And then she says, okay, now this is something I couldn't find, but supposedly at some point, it seemed fairly recent, but I couldn't get a date on it, that her husband, Philip, took his son off of the policy. So I don't know how much it was. I had a feeling it was something like each one gets $1 million, but took his son off, saying that, and she's saying this, not him. She's saying that he took him off because the son, he had a bad marriage and he was bad with money, and he didn't want his son to get like $1 million, and his wife would get it in a divorce like his wife did, or something, whatever. So he takes his son off completely, leaves him nothing if he dies. Okay. And then she ends up with $1 million. So she got $1 million, or $1.2 million, I think, from his death. So I want to know when that policy was written. And I can't find this out. If you can find that out, I'm going to put that in the top comment. If you can find out when he put her on the policy, because I'm not saying this is true, but if he put her on the policy and 2 years hadn't passed and he committed suicide, she sure as heck doesn't want it to be labeled suicide because she can't collect the money. She cannot get that money within 2 years. So she wants it undetermined or murder so she can collect her $1 million. Now, I'm not saying she had anything to do with his death, but I'm thinking maybe she didn't want to lose that $1 million, and that's why she can't accept that he committed suicide. Okay? And she's disingenuous in a lot of this whole show. And I'm going to show you why everything that is going on is almost a weird propaganda thing. So we have the detective, who I think has just been pushed into stuff by 48 Hours. It goes, I don't think we did a good job. Yeah, murder. I don't know why West went the murder route. And Joe Mora, okay, I don't know. Maybe it's what 48 Hours wanted. They wanted the grieving widow, and we wanted the show to be about murder, even though it was never proven in the show, mind you. It was just that the police did a bad job and it probably was murder. That's where it comes down to. I mean, Joe Moore also says in the Madeleine McCann case that he investigated for 48 hours that Jane Tanner was lying, but the McCanns have nothing to do with what happened to Madeleine. Okay, I'm not saying whether he's a good investigator or not, but I don't think he gets much time to investigate. I think he's given a job and he's in the town for maybe a week, and they run through talking about it to a few people, and he throws up his opinion. That's not investigation. But here's what they did. And I think this is what more interesting to me than actually what killed him is that they go to such lengths in these shows with an agenda. They presented this fellow. Okay, this guy. He did a psychological autopsy for the Air Force. And let me pull that up. I hopefully have not lost that one. Here we go. I do have it now. All right. So this is a psychological autopsy from the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology. This is from Rockville, Maryland, actually, near where I live, from the Office of the Armed Forces Medical Examiner. And it said here, this was done in, when was this done? Well, it said here, this psychological autopsy was requested by the Lackland Detachment of the Air Force Office of Special Investigation in order to assist in the determination of the manner of death in the case of Colonel Philip Shue. Oh, by the way, I got to go back here 1 second. About these letters, they did ask her, well, did he go to the police? And she said, no, he didn't do that because we're military people. We follow the chain of command. So he went to whoever in the Air Force. And she says, I don't know if they ever investigated anything. So this guy's getting these things to say his ex-wife is going to kill him. He doesn't go to the police. And she claims he went to the Air Force, but nothing came of it. That's not true. Absolutely a lie. And I'm going to prove it to you with this report from the Armed Forces Institute of Pathology. Now, the guy who wrote this is this fellow on the left here. And his name is Gerald F. Donovan, M.D. He is the Deputy Chief Medical Examiner, Behavioral Science Division, Office of the Armed Forces Medical Examiner. All right, he wrote this 20-page autopsy report. And I'm going to say here, this guy rocks. This guy is so good. I'm so impressed with this report. And I don't get impressed all the time. This guy did his job. He did it well. Now, wait till you hear what's in this report. And if you've been thinking this clearly is a murder, you may change your mind after I read you the most important parts of this thing. And this is where people don't tell you the truth, including these documentary shows. And so 48 hours, I'm not impressed. All right. So anyway, he was a 54-year-old man, and he was planning to retire from the Air Force in October of 2003. And then it goes on here. I'm scrolling through because I want to read you the most important things. They talk about the death scene evidence, but we've already heard about that. They talk about the autopsy reports, the two of them. The two autopsy reports are in here. Toxicology reports. Okay. Now we get to the interesting part. The background history. Remember how his wife said he was just the healthiest, happiest, perfect, most wonderful, everything's perfect guy until he got those letters that scared him? Okay. Colonel Shue joined the Air Force for the first time in 1970 and served as a navigator from 1970 to 1974. It appears his career as an aviator was cut short by his medical problems. He had several episodes of sudden loss of consciousness and had been diagnosed with Meniere's disease. One of the final notes from the medical records available indicated that Colonel Shue was being considered for a medical board and that he had been removed from flight status. All right, so that's the first problem he had. He had this problem with losing consciousness. All right, so he couldn't be an aviator. Air Force records indicate he had a break from service from 1974 to 1984. While he was out of service, he trained to become a physician's assistant, and then he attended medical school. He completed psychiatry residency on active duty, then served as a staff psychiatrist at Elgin, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Air Force Base for about 4 years. He then had another break in service for about a year. His father stated that during that time, he was part of a private psychiatry practice in Georgia. So he left the service and had private practice. However, there were financial problems with the practice that led to his leaving it. He then rejoined the Air Force and stayed on active duty until his death. Okay, so he failed at the private practice, and he was going to Alabama to do something similar. So that would be a stressor right there. From 1998 to 2001, he was a student at the residency in aerospace medicine. In a counseling statement from December 1999, the program director noticed that he failed to complete his MPH thesis. That's a Master's of Psychiatric something or other. Shue submitted a statement in which he stated that, quote, he was reluctant to accept a degree from the University of Texas Health Center, San Antonio, because of pervasive cheating at that institution. There was no mention in the documents that his laptop containing the thesis had been stolen in July of 1999. At the end of the counseling session, Colonel Shue indicated he would complete the thesis. So here's a big red flag. He said he didn't want to get this degree, and he didn't because of this pervasive cheating. Now, I understand the concept that if there's pervasive cheating at a college, that it might reflect on your getting your degree from there. When they find out later that the college like grade inflated and let plagiarism go, that the meaning of your degree is not like, oh, you graduated from that great place. It's like, oh, you graduated from that place, and it makes you look bad. But that he says there's pervasive cheating. And it, if he wanted to complete this thing, why really is that was your reason? But then there was this thing about the stolen laptop, which he didn't mention at that time. And you're going to see another red flag come up. All right. In an interview, he said that at the start of the second year, it came to his attention. Okay, wait a second. Okay. In an interview, Richardson said that at the start of the second year of the program, it came to his attention that he still had not completed the MPHs required during his first year. When he counseled Shue about it, Shue first said that he'd written the thesis, but he lost it when his laptop computer was stolen. So now that's why it didn't get completed, because his computer was stolen. His laptop was. Richardson said he was surprised to think that Shue would not have a backup copy of a document as important as a master's degree thesis, but that he didn't question his explanation. He just said you have to complete this thesis one way or another if you want to be in this program. He raised his concern about cheating again. And he's like, again? He thought that cheating was prevalent in many academic environments, but did not understand how Shue would let it interfere with his performing what he needed to do and do it with integrity. In addition, Richardson said that when Shue told him about the threats on his life later on, he took it very seriously and told Shue to inform law enforcement immediately. He remembered Shue making statements that minimized the value of telling the police, and he did not know whether Shue ever told a law enforcement agency. So they did take it seriously. They told him go to police, and he didn't. So this is where the wife is not telling you the exact truth here, or the husband never told her the truth. One of the ways. But now the missing laptop, keep that in mind. So now he says he didn't finish this because his laptop was missing and got stolen and stole his entire thesis. All right. So then there's some stuff about his divorce, and father says his son was obsessed with getting a divorce and didn't know why, and so on and so forth. Okay, let's do some other stuff here. The episodes of the loss of consciousness. In 1973, he was presented to a medical clinic in Okinawa, Japan, and reported that an intruder had accosted him in his room. The initial report indicated he was struck on the head, but had not lost consciousness. Subsequent reports by consultants indicated they lost consciousness for about 5 minutes. Later in the year, he had 3 episodes of loss of consciousness with bladder incontinence. Now, one of the weird things was supposedly there was evidence that he was wearing a diaper when he was found, his body was found. Not the diaper wasn't there, but there's evidence from a diaper being on his body at some point. So I'm going to say his incontinence is continuing. Whether he wears that at night, I don't know. So he had this weird, he had 3 episodes of loss of consciousness with bladder incontinence. One of these episodes occurred during a flight for which he was serving as a navigator. He underwent extensive evaluation for a seizure disorder. He was determined not to have a seizure disorder. They never understood what it was causing it, and that's why they thought maybe Meniere's. So now let's go to some other things. Here we go. In 1999, he had his first symptoms of panic attacks while he was in the library writing his Master of Public Health. Oh, that's what the MPH is, not psychiatric. Master of Public Health. He told Dr. Dion that in 1999 he'd received a letter that indicated his life was in danger due to the insurance policy his wife held on him. The symptoms of anxiety progressed to the point of depression over the latter half of 1999. This is the letter I read to you. In December 1999, he sought psychiatric treatment and started taking fluoxetine. I may pronounce these all wrong. 20 milligrams. His depression responded to that treatment in the first half of 2000, but he experienced sexual side effects. Clonazepam was added for anxiety after he experienced a panic attack on base. Then a trial of sertraline was made. His mood improved, but he developed side effects, including apathy and sexual problems, so he stopped the medication. The specific sexual problem was not noted in either case. Then in 2002, by that time, so now he's been on drugs for like, what is it now, 3 years? The wife seems to say, oh, doesn't have much problem. Guy's got severe problems. But he doesn't just have depression, and you're going to see why I say that. The only psychiatric medicine he took was clonazepam, 5 milligrams twice daily. He had continued avoidant symptoms and a decreased ability to do his job when he had to function in large groups. He had no trouble in one-on-one situations, such as treating a patient in his office and teaching residents. In 2002, the dose of clonazepam was increased to 0.5 milligrams 3 times daily, and another antidepressant, venlafaxine, 37.5 milligrams daily, was added to treat his depression and anxiety. That change occurred at his initial visit with Dr. Dion. At the follow-up appointment, he was tolerating the medication well, but reported little benefit. He was seen in June, August, and November of 2002. At each visit, he reported a good but not complete response to treatment. He also said that he had headaches that preceded the panic attacks, and the symptoms of panic attack were similar to a heart attack, which Shue feared based on his history of family having cardiovascular disease. So that he's not talking about the threat now. He's talking about his fear of death from the family history. Then in January and March of 2003, he reported more symptoms of anxiety. He reported increased vigilance and more black and white thinking. Dr. Dion quoted him as saying that his vigilance was almost paranoia. They discussed his greatest fear as being disabled in uniform, but did not go into what he was being vigilant about. He is now discussing paranoia. What I'm seeing in this case is psychosis. This guy's depressed. He's anxious. He's having panic attacks. He's having paranoia. He's having all kinds of issues that are not minor. These are major issues. How he continues to work, and I guess he can understand his patients. But in the last clinic note, April 3rd, Shue and Dr. Dion focused on clarifying the results of cardiology and neurology consults that were taking place. They discussed adding a new medication to control panic attacks, but they did not. They didn't have the record doesn't have how often the panic attacks are happening. All right. Treatment was Shue was symptom focused. The conversation focused on depression and anxiety. He raised an issue. Dr. Dion raised an issue regarding the larger circumstances of Shue's life. He gave short, non-committal answers that Dr. Dion interpreted his not wanting to discuss such matters. Oh, so it wasn't just the ex-wife threatening him. There were other matters that he just didn't want to get into. Well, was that his marriage? Was something else wrong there? Was he afraid of retirement? Was he terrified of, he bought an expensive house. Did he think he couldn't keep up the payment? What was it? And so overall, Dr. Dion thought that Shue controlled the contents of their sessions, did not reveal personal information beyond medical concerns. Now, it gets even more interesting. Dr. Dion was concerned about the possibility of paranoia when he first heard the story of the threatening letters. Shue told him that he knew the story did not seem logical, but that it was true. Now, I say it's not logical either. It makes no sense. And when you have a guy who says, oh, look, I got these, and I'm telling you the story, but it's not logical. Why is he saying that? Because he knows it's not logical. Dion noticed increased anxiety in his emotional expression that he thought was consistent with the story being true. Well, I think he blew that one. He also thought that Shue was concerned that Dion would think he was paranoid, which he is paranoid. He says he told him he was paranoid. Dr. Dion reported that Shue did not tell him of the concerns that led to his departure from the aerospace medicine community. Okay, why is he retired? While he told him of the laptop being stolen, Shue did not tell him of its return with a threatening note. Now get this. Okay, this is what happened. He supposedly he was in the library, goes to the bathroom, and while he's in the bathroom, his laptop is stolen. And that's when he loses his master's thesis. But months later, he comes out and the laptop is sitting on the hood of his car with a note on it that says, "Don't go to the police. Others will get hurt." And the hard drive is wiped. Now, first of all, what a coincidence that while he just goes to the bathroom, his laptop gets stolen in that little teeny moment. And why would anybody return the laptop to him? What would be the point? Again, does it seem illogical? Yes. Is it true? I sincerely doubt it's true. It's ludicrous. Come on now. Okay. Then he described more behavior. Shue was taken to decrease his risk of being harmed. Now this is the paranoia. This included altering his route when driving to and from work and using a post office box instead of his mailbox due to the risk of it being booby-trapped. Okay. Okay, his mailbox is going to be booby-trapped. Is that what the letters were? Because I don't know that the letters came in the mailbox. That information doesn't seem to be very accurate. And he's changing his route when he drives to work. Okay. Finally, Dr. Dion related that about 6 months prior to his death, Shue told him that he had a dissociative episode. Dr. Dion quoted Shue as saying that in this episode, he imagined, quote, his car went out of control on the way to work and great violence was done to him. Do you see an issue here? Hold on a second. I got to fix something. It's driving me crazy. Is that better? I'm sorry. I didn't like where my camera was. I kept feeling like I was looking off some direction. Anyway, so he has this dissociative episode where he envisions himself driving his car into a freaking tree. But amazingly enough, the person who wanted to kill him somehow got him to do that. All right. So then, let's see, it goes on here. He's having intense headaches, trying to control the pain. Let's see. Okay. So much extra legal history. On the 1st of July, 2000, while on a flight from White Plains, New York to Chicago, an incident occurred which resulted in Shue briefly being detained by the Chicago police when the flight landed. The police report said that a flight attendant indicated that Shue got out of his seat while the fasten seatbelt sign was on. When she stood to direct him back to his seat, he slapped her on the back. Another attendant witnessed this and reported it. When the plane landed, he was handcuffed and taken into custody. Upon learning that the incident took place over the state of Michigan and therefore out of their jurisdiction, they led him without charging. I didn't know that's how it worked in the air. Anyway, and incident would be investigated at a later date. On October 2000, he made a voluntary statement to an FBI agent regarding the incident. In the statement, he said that he was at the lavatory when the fasten seatbelt sign went on. He got returned to his seat, but the light went off again within 30 seconds. At that point, he got back up to use the lavatory, and when he was standing at the lavatory door, he lost his balance, and he reached out to catch his balance, and he brushed the shoulder of one flight attendant with his arm. He was later very surprised when a senior flight attendant told him that the police would be meeting the flight. They concluded that, let's see, they never charged him with a crime, and the airlines gave him a free hotel room for him and his wife. It's nice of them. Okay. He later cited this incident as a reason for declining orders to command a squadron. He said that he wanted to ensure that his name was legally clear before taking a command position. His rationale was that it would be an embarrassment to the Air Force to have a commander arrested on such charges. Okay, now here's the complaint about the missing computer. Let me just read it to you. So it's from this exact report. He reported this. He made a legal complaint in 1999. He reported when he was working in the library, he got up to use the men's room. When he returned, his laptop had been stolen. He notified the school security and a report was filed. In a narrative dated 6 December 2000 that was found on his computer. The note was on his computer. He indicated that the computer was returned later in the month. So it went missing in June. And later in that month of June, the laptop was returned to him. He said it was placed on the hood of his car while parked near his home with a note that said, if he reported anything to the police, others would die. In addition, the hard drive had been wiped clean, resulting in the loss of the only copy he had of his MPH thesis. This narrative also indicated Shue had not previously divulged the return of the computer. So you see, he's not telling the truth. This guy, this whole thing about the computer, I'm going to say he didn't finish his master's. He didn't get it done, so he claimed that it was disappeared with his computer. And then he wanted to use his computer, so it had to return. But with a ridiculous note written on the computer that basically says, people will die if you tell the police about this incident. Well, obviously he did tell somebody about the incident. Nobody died. What was he going to, why not just take that straight in and get it fingerprinted, but he didn't do these things. So is it logical that somebody would just happen to be there in the library to steal that and then return it to him with a threat? And that threat sounds very similar to the later threats he got, supposedly written by some person that his wife was trying to kill him. So you see the problem. The chances that these letters were not written by him is very, very tiny. All right. Wait a minute. Let's see. Here's the will information. Oh, good. Maybe I missed this. Wait a minute. The 11th of April, 2003, Shue signed a new will. Tracy Shue stated that the only change in the will was removing Jeffrey Shue, that's his son, as secondary beneficiary to inherit property if Tracy Shue did not survive him, and putting Tracy Shue's sister in his place. Shue said that the change was precipitated by several factors. First, Shue wanted to ensure that his wealth would benefit his parents if they survived him. This was particularly an acute concern because his father had a stroke. In addition, he was concerned about his son's ability to manage money and the stability of his son's marriage. Tracy Shue said her husband did not want his son to waste his money or lose in a divorce settlement. So she wanted the money to come to her and her alone. And this was done on April 11th, 2003. It says she stated the only change in the will. Well, I don't know whether at that point when that will was changed, that was when the 2 years started. And if it was labeled a suicide, she wouldn't have gotten that $1 million. Now, I don't know that that's true. If anybody can figure that part out, let me know. But I find her sketchy. I mean, this whole 48 hours is how this ex-wife is this horrible person and probably killed him. And Tracy, the new wife, is the most loving person in the world and she didn't want anything except that she didn't want her husband's murder to go listed as a suicide. And she says, well, I know there'll probably nothing will ever come of it, but I'm glad at least people understand he was murdered. Well, people that seemed to understand he was murdered was insurance companies, which would take the suicide thing out of it for her. If the judge said that, then she can get her payment if that 2-year thing is in force for her. Other than that, the police are like, we're not changing that. And I'm going to say the reason not changing is because there's no evidence of a homicide. These letters, in my opinion, were written by him. I find him to be paranoid. I think he's got a lot of psychiatric problems. He's had them for a long time. He's been able to cover a lot because he's a psychiatrist. I don't know what kind of paranoia issues he has, but to me, I don't know. He's a paranoid schizophrenic. I don't know. But I think he's got problems that have nothing to do with anybody trying to kill him. But did he maybe think somebody was trying to kill him? Maybe. And does he realize he wrote these notes? Well, probably he would, and he wants to prove to people that others that, oh, look, they're trying to hurt me. It seemed like with the laptop, he wanted to convince people of something. So he made a claim, and then an absolutely ridiculous statement that the thing returned with this threatening note on it. That to me was all created by him. I can't believe it was created by him. Nobody stole his stuff and created that nonsense. This had to be created by him. So he was not having a problem with fabricating stories in order to either get away with what he wanted to get away with, which may be just not writing that thing. There was another instance where he took this test. It was a very important test. It was a multiple choice test. He got a 0 on it. 0. How do you get a 0 on a multiple choice test? Even if you don't know anything, the chances of getting it right, 25% right, is statistical. He gets a 0, so he purposely said, oh, it's A, so I'm going to put in D. It's B, so I'm going to put in C. And that was a very peculiar thing. So he's had these issues throughout a lot of time of bizarre behavior, bizarre circumstances happening to him, paranoia, depression, all kinds of stuff. So his wife's saying he was perfectly healthy psychologically and they were just going off into the sunset. She's a liar. I'm sorry. She's a liar. And I don't know why she's a liar. Is it because she wanted the $1 million? Or is it because she truly, he sold her on some kind of story that she actually believes? I don't know. He was also off the meds, by the way. It says here, let's see what this one last thing is. Tracy Shue also commented that she thought that if her husband had been abducted, he might have thought the two witnesses were following him, increasing his distress. 2 witnesses were just on the highway. She also thought that the accident scene occurred just prior to the last exit back to town. She speculated that if her husband had been in an agitated state, he might have been trying to get on the exit ramp as a last possible moment, trying to escape from his pursuers. Get out of here! This is some ridiculously badly written Hollywood fantasy, whatever. So the question would be, you're going to ask then, well, why would he do that to himself? Cut his nipples off and do that? Well, I don't know. When a person is psychotic and has whatever things in their head, they do strange crap to themselves. Could he have actually gotten up that morning, driven somewhere, pulled his car over somewhere, wherever it was, and had a pack of needles and put the lidocaine in there to dull any pain or whatever he's going to do, and take some gloves and do whatever he did, and then just chuck all that stuff in a trash can or wherever it was dumped that nobody would have a clue where it was, and then get in the car and continue driving. Was it part of a fantasy of his? Was he fantasizing being tortured? Did he want to make it look like he was tortured? Did he? I don't know. Going into the mind of people who are having major psychological issues is always really very difficult to do. Did he plan to kill himself? Did he at the last minute decide to kill himself? Did he at some point just lose control and his mind was whacking out? I don't know. But I can tell you this, I see no evidence there wasn't evidence that his car was shoved off the road. There was no, the tape on his wrist, didn't show like signs that he was trying to pull away and try to get out of anything. There was no stretching on any of the tape. The tape wasn't taped in a way that looked like anybody taped him. It looked like he just taped himself because it was on separate arms and separate legs. And I don't know if he's right-handed, but if he was, that little finger being cut is, yeah, you can do all that. Now, one of the things, the ex-wife, she brings up, maybe it's just this team that brought it up, that the ex-wife was a sex counselor of some sort and knew stuff about BDSM, so she would know about sadistic, masochistic, sadistic things. And so they showed this picture of somebody being bound. I was like, what does that have to do with this? Why would she, just because she understands that this exists in the world of sex, would she get her ex-husband and do these things? What? And besides which, it isn't chopping your nipples off. People use nipple clamps to cause pain, and then they release them, and the nipples remain. So that has nothing to do with it. So I don't know. I don't see any. Again, it's not a method of you killing somebody. If you just want to kill somebody, And of course, they weren't there. So supposedly they hired somebody. That's just the other theory, that they hired somebody, a hitman. This is a hitman thing? No, it's absolutely nonsensical. So I am pretty frustrated that they have a show and they bring 3 guys on who all say, oh, he was murdered. And they take this report, and all they said was, this report was crap. You watch this show, they don't show this report. They don't read from this report. This report says everything about his psychology, his psychosis, his manipulations, his fabrications. Everything is in that report. And if you don't read the report, you buy what 48 Hours is selling you, which is, I guess, a sad story for the widow. I want to know. How was she under the 2-year mark to get her money? That's what I'd like to know. Okay, so I'm going to go to some of your comments here. Okay. Fascinating report and great job. Great job. I want to give this guy credit again. His name again is Gerald F. Donovan, MD, from the Behavioral Science Division. And that was one heck of an excellent report. Just very impressed. Very impressed. Yeah, better than the dog ate my homework. He was a very conflicted guy. He had issues being in there. He kept saying things like he didn't like the way the military did certain things. He didn't like the way he just always had something. Everybody else was doing something that he found unethical or something that made him uncomfortable. He had a lot of issues with that. So I don't know. I think he was always conflicted about whether he wanted to stay or go. Well, there you go. Point there. Pat's no, that's because I hit that. I clicked that little thing. Okay, wait. Just because you all say that, so I can be fair and honest. Okay, I'm going to not touch up my appearance. Let's see. So you can watch the change. Okay, here we go. This is what I really look like. And this is what this does to me. But if I really want it to be good, I'll go here. I stay away from that because that's too fakey. That's oh my God. Let's see what else you have to say. Leslie says he reported a stolen laptop, convenient when he couldn't produce his thesis, and a threatening letter when the laptop was stolen. Yeah, well, when it was returned, the threatening letter came after it was after the hard drive was wiped out, supposedly. And the laptop was returned, and there was a note in it, in the laptop that said this. And it's left on the hood of his car. Now, I want to know, why somebody didn't steal that off the hood of his car? Wasn't he lucky that when he walked out, the laptop was just sitting there on the hood of his car? Again, when he says it's not logical, he's not kidding. It's not logical. It's not believable. Yeah, he was full of excuses on things. And I think he really had many psychological issues. Not saying he wasn't in school, but it seems he did not want to do the work or actually graduate. If you do that, you actually have to get a job and be responsible. Well, people said he did a good job at his job. There were really no complaints from his patients. He did go overseas, and he seemed to, I don't know. I think he had psychological problems. I think his problem was that he had massive anxiety at different points in his life. And when he had that anxiety, he thought he was going to fail. So he didn't want to even go forward with it because he was going to fail. I think at this point where he got this new job and this new house and this new life, I think he couldn't, he didn't want to deal with it. I think he thought he was going to fail and all of that, and things are all going to go wrong. And he was off the meds. And I think he decided, I'm not going to go. And I only have one way out, and he took it. So, yes, for a long time. Yes, the history is interesting. And this is when I always say, look at people's history. Things don't usually develop just overnight on one issue. There's usually a major history in the past. People aren't, there are things that one can have some traumatic event in life that can change things. But a lot of times we'll see that this stuff keeps going and going. And his seems to start early enough in his life, back in his early days in the Air Force. So I would say, I don't know whether there was any level of schizophrenia or something else, but he was not ever right in the head, in my opinion. Okay. Oh, you said at the beginning. Okay, Amy. He wanted to prove he was being targeted, so self-injuries and duct tape. That well, it may be the reason he did it. Why he chose that methodology, it's an odd one. But there's only so many ways you can injure yourself and make it look like somebody else did it. So I tend to agree that in his own mind, he would prove he was being targeted. Yeah, I think so. The methodology, again, I can't get into his mind, but he would prove he was being targeted. And maybe he himself wanted to either make his ex-wife look guilty of something, something being done to him. Maybe he wanted it not to look like a suicide. Maybe he wanted his second wife to get her money if indeed she wouldn't get it if it was a suicide. So maybe he was actually trying to do that. But we have to look at how well he does with his fakey stuff. In my opinion, his fakey stuff. He does terribly. This man does not have a logical mind. If he wrote these notes, notes are ridiculous. They're ludicrous. They're goofy. They don't make sense, and they're not logical. So if he writes notes like this and comes up with excuses like, oh, my laptop got stolen and now it's come back on my hood of my car. If he comes up with these stories for that, who says doesn't come up with a very good methodology of offing himself either and wanting to prove that somebody else did it? Maybe just doesn't have, the guy shouldn't be in the business of writing fiction either, because he's not a good fiction writer. That's Stephanie says the presentation of having been tortured and literally driven to his death is a pretty massive acting out of his own inner feelings about how life has treated him. I like that. Oh, I really like that, Stephanie. That's really good. Yeah, that's impressive. Well said. The fact that he had this, remember this thing where he saw himself in the future in this accident. Yes, that's really a good point. That he was acting out actually the feelings in him. I'm tortured by life, and it's driven me to this point. I like it. Very good, everybody. That's very impressive. I like it. I like it very much. Well, there you go. He knew about the murderous plans because he was the author. Yeah, I think so. Well, that would be that's the easy way to say it. Cray. Yes. He's definitely off. And I say just the way they present him as being in the show as being totally mentally healthy. And I'm not saying the guy didn't have, I don't know what kind of guy he was. He could be a very kind fellow. Maybe he was good to the wives. Maybe his second wife did find him. Maybe he was funny. Maybe he helped people. I mean, it doesn't that he didn't do these things. It's just that he definitely had really psychologically disturbed individual. I don't know how people don't see, but see, they hid this from the viewers. This psychological autopsy from the viewers. They hid it from them and tossed it off. You look at I can't remember how they said it. It's like, oh, but that was just, and they said it was damning. Well, yeah. And then they trashed it and made fun of it almost like this guy, he wrote this damning. Well, the report's damning because it includes all the information you would need to know to come to a determination that the guy most likely did this to himself and committed suicide. And therefore, it wasn't a homicide. And that judge saying it was a homicide was ridiculous. I have no idea why he even, but the police refused to change it. And because they just don't believe that they probably saw the psychological autopsy and they're like, yeah, we're good. We're good with it. Basically, we thought this is what it was. And now you're supporting it. Could they have done a better investigation? Maybe. Now, they made it sound like at the beginning they never investigated anything, but she claims, the second wife, Tracy, that they came to his house and looked through the house and did investigate there to see whether he did these things at home. Because theoretically, first of all, we don't know anything she says is true about that morning. We don't know exactly when he left. She says he left at this certain time, but there's no proof of that. I don't believe. I don't know if they have any. I didn't see any evidence that where it was going toward the office. Just evidence when he's coming the other direction. Could he have done something at home? Maybe. Could in the garage, in the bathroom, in the kitchen. I don't know. Or did he go someplace else and just under a tree somewhere and by a river? buy a trash can in the back of an alley, who knows? Who knows? I mean, the guy is psychologically disturbed. They can do a lot of weird things. They just can. Because when you get to that state, people say, well, how could he stand the pain? Well, you know why people punch their fists into walls when they're angry? Because they want to feel the pain. Somehow pain is better. The physical pain is better to some people than the emotional pain. And if you really want to do something, you'll do it. There are tons of people who've done these make it look like murder things by doing some really wacky things to themselves. So, yeah, foreshadowing his reality. Yeah. You're late. Well, hello, Clarissa. I guess you are. We've been here a while. I don't trust the second wife. Something off with those letters. Yeah, when you watch this show, she comes across very sweet, but I just don't. I don't find her truthful. I do not. And so you definitely should see the 48 Hours show, just because it's fascinating to watch how they made this whole program. To the police did a bad job. This poor woman, he never got justice. The word justice, by the way, is thrown around a lot now. Oh, they didn't get justice, Well, so it makes it really bad because somebody killed him, murdered him, and the police didn't do their job. And now he didn't get justice, and the wife didn't get justice, and so on and so forth. And it makes for a good show because everybody really feels bad for the wife. And that he got murdered by, and you should see how many people. That's interesting. Depending on who does the show, I did see one other channel. Most of the channels are very much he got murdered, but there was one channel that was definitely it was a YouTube channel, definitely on the fence there. And because that person was on the fence and pointed out some of the more important things, like the laptop issue, that whole group of people were like, he's crazy. The wife didn't kill him. But the other people, like the ex-wife, she's a horrible person. She killed him. There's no question. And it's amazing. And so it's about 48 Hours. I'm going to say this. I've said it before. A lot of times the production of these programs has nothing to do with the truth. It has everything to do with drama. And so take what they say with a grain of salt. And you have to do a lot of research. And I swear to God, if I hadn't found this report, I don't know what I would have thought. Now, interesting enough, though, the report is under CBS.com. So, which is interesting to me because, so 48 Hours, that's CBS too, right? I think. I get confused on who's with who. But it was linked. So it was available, but it wasn't totally hidden. But on the other hand, it wasn't really discussed in the actual show. So is 48 Hours CBS? I got to figure this out. CBS 48 Hours. Let's see. Yeah, it is 48 Hours. So actually, in the show, they pretty much ditched this whole thing and just, I say, didn't make him look like he knew what he was doing. But it was linked through their website. So that is interesting. That is how I found it. But I'm going to say most people never actually click on that. And so they only see what they see on the television. Because most people are just watching the television show. They're not going on the internet. So, Is Pat speed talking? I don't know. Am I? I always talk fast. But I do talk faster than I probably should. Yeah, you think he wrote the letters? Yeah, I think so. Let's see what else you all have to say. Molly says this guy had enough red flags to cover a football field, and it's sad in the sense that with so many red flags, we're only hearing the big ones, and I'm going to say there had to be way more in his daily life, things that he said that you go, something's off. Now, maybe he was able to pull it together when he was sitting there with a patient. He was able to do that, but he clearly had issues, and that the second wife would have no knowledge of those issues, except when he got those letters. That did cause him anxiety. That's a point. I don't know that he was ever unconscious. I don't think he was unconscious when he was driving, because they said he had the car was controlled. I mean, first he did some things that went over, that were clearly not driving properly and going the wrong way. But did he at some point lose consciousness and drive into the tree? Maybe. I guess it's possible. Because he supposedly had issues with this before, but again, I don't know what those issues exactly were. They said Meniere's disease. So he could have caused himself the anxiety, and then the pain caused him to then act irrationally. Maybe he wasn't planning to kill himself when he started out the day. Maybe he thought he would just pretend he got kidnapped and present himself that way as some excuse for something. Again, for maybe the ex-wife not getting the money, but then it would be a huge investigation. He didn't want to go to the police. So I tend to think I think the other explanation was really good. I mean, I like that one the best. Let me go back and I find it again. Oh, that's a good point. Harper says this. It's very similar to the Munchausen case, where a woman made threatening phone calls to herself and injured and abducted herself multiple times, ending in suicide. I did a show on that case. Everybody can remember the name of it. Let me know. I did a show on I just don't remember the name, but yes, a lot of people thought she was murdered, and I said she was not murdered. It was definitely Munchausen's. People wondered, can Munchausen's be a male thing? Yes, it can. It can. Mostly it's female, and because Munchausen's is a behavior, it's not a disorder. Munchausen syndrome is just a psychopathic way of getting attention. And mostly it's done by women who injure themselves or claim they've been injured to get attention, or they hurt their children, then it becomes Munchausen syndrome by proxy when look, people are hurting my children, or my children are dying and I'm the victim of this whole thing. So they get attention through the harm or death of their children. So he may have had some of that going for himself, that instead of doing a male psychopathic thing, he could have been doing he's a little bit more female in his psychopathic thinking, that he wanted to get attention. I think he really loved getting out of things, and I think he couldn't handle things. And I think his way of not dealing with things was to create these other players that were causing him to fail. I don't even know about his marriage. Maybe the reason, the belief is out that the ex-wife was horrible. Maybe she wasn't horrible. Maybe he was a problem. Maybe he was a problem, and he kept blaming everything on her, just because he had to have someone to blame for things. Just a very, very sad case, but I just don't think it's a case of homicide like 48 Hours would like everybody to believe. I want to put this up one more time. Stephanie's great statement. The presentation of having been tortured and literally driven to his death is a pretty massive acting out of his own inner feelings about how life has treated him. I just really like that a lot. You get the A+ in my class today. You beat the teacher out on that one. I like it a lot. There we go. Cindy James. Yep. And she definitely, in my opinion, was not murdered. She spent a lot of time gathering attention toward herself in the most crazy ways, and she suffered a lot of pain in doing it. So, it's not that people can't suffer pain to get attention. They can. It's what they can do. So, yeah. Suicide by vehicle. Well, you can hurt other people, and yes, and he at this point drove off into a tree, so at least he didn't do a head-on thing. But people do that sometimes. They don't. At some point, sometimes they don't care about other people. The selfishness is there, so they just cross the double yellow line and take out a whole family. So, yeah, she was a tortured woman. She was a mess. She was a mess. Well, that's interesting. The Schnoosh says, I worked at a university and saw how people who are verbally strong can mask some serious symptoms quite easily. I'm sure he was verbally adept as well. Patients might not have noticed anything. That's very good. Verbally adept is good. He knows how to talk. He knows how to interact with people because that's his job as a psychiatrist. So, and of course, in an hour-long session where it's about them and not you, he's not trying to. He can take himself out of himself for a while and deal with their problems, and that's probably kind of a pleasant thing for him actually, because he has so much anxiety. But then when he walks away from the job, perhaps that's where the problem is: the dealing with life in general, dealing with the military in general, dealing with finances, dealing with exes and present wives. I mean. And he says, and his son, he's claiming basically, well, the second wife is claiming his son is a mess. But, I also wonder, did she push him into that? Did she push him into taking his own son out of the will? Yeah. So I say, I'm sorry, Tracy, don't trust you. I'm not saying you're guilty of anything, but some of your statements just don't make any sense to me. And they're not credible. And so you're either you just don't want people to think he killed himself, and so you're just hiding all the things that point to that, just because you just want his memory to be more honorable, or there's something to do with the money. I don't know, but yeah. Any other comments before I wrap it up today? That's a good point. You don't feel pain when you're in deep emotional pain. Yeah, it's amazing. It really, truly is amazing. That's the theory, is he injected the lidocaine, but they didn't find the needle mark. So it would have to have been literally, if he did it to his chest and that's where he cut, then that's what they're thinking. Maybe then you didn't see them, but how much, if that was really, there seemed to be enough in his system that you wonder where it came from. But if they're saying it didn't come from the stuff he put on himself, because there was some other chemical in there that didn't match in the lab reports, and but there's no needle marks. Well, how did it get into his system? One way or the other, it got into his system. Whether it was a suicide or a murder, it still has to get into his system. So it's like, what are you trying to say? Had to get in there somehow, and that anybody. Oh, here's the other thing. Oh, I forgot about that. If you're torturing somebody, you want to give them some kind of drug that would ease the pain. Think about that. What would be the point? It makes no sense. So here we have, again, something that makes no sense. The torture itself makes zero sense. And giving somebody lidocaine before you torture them makes even less sense. So the whole homicide, torture and homicide thing just has absolutely no validity and is nonsensical. So, and I'm just annoyed that they toss the suicide thing so quickly in order to follow in this program, in the 48 hours thing, to follow their little agenda, which I think gets them more views because there's a sympathy thing there. And that makes it more of a mystery. They always love a mystery. So, well, that is true, but it's an interesting point here. You shouldn't be ashamed of mental health issues. It only lessens the understanding of when people hide it and don't accept it. But he is also a psychiatrist. It's kind of like a very obese doctor being your diet doctor. You're kind of like, I don't know if I trust your ideas here and your recommendations. You can't, look at you. So, you have a psychiatrist who can't handle his life, who has all these issues, and he's your psychiatrist. I don't know if I'd be so comfortable with that. Maybe, it could be a thing like an AA thing, like another person who has, been an alcoholic will understand an alcoholic. But still, you kind of wonder if he can give good advice on how to have a happy and healthy life while he is a mess. So, yeah. Did you? So you had one. I just find that kind of amusing. Now, somebody mentioned something about dementia, which is an interesting possibility. I don't think this has anything to do with what you're talking about here. But there are people who do have dementia, quite early onset dementia, and may not recognize what the issue is and become paranoid because of that dementia. And if it hasn't been figured out, I don't know that that's what he had, but that is an issue sometimes where you have to look into whether that's a possible thing. Yeah, I think it's too much stress and too much failure. I think he just couldn't handle things. I really think that was, for whatever reasons. Yeah, he just, didn't do well with that. He failed. The fact that he failed in the beginning, lost out. He wanted to be an aviator, and he lost his career, and he couldn't do that. And that might have been a big blow to him. And then for whatever reasons, he decided to go into psychiatry. Now, I will point this out. I've pointed out many times that sometimes people go into psychiatry because they find they have problems. A lot of psychiatrists seem to go that direction, and people who have mental health, they've had problems, and they trying to figure out their own problems. And in doing so, they become fascinated with psychiatry and how the mind works. So that kind of draws a certain type of person sometimes into psychiatry, as opposed to a person who's very, very stable, may not go into the field. But that would be probably a better person to go into the field, except maybe they're not as empathetic. It's like, what the hell's wrong with you? Get over it. Snap out of it. Moonstruck, if you remember Moonstruck and Cher. He's like, whoa, and she's like, snap out of it. So I would probably be the snap out of it person. I'm not I don't know that I could do a psychiatrist's work, because I can do the Dear Profiler Pat advice that I have on this channel, on that playlist, Dear Profiler Pat, what should I do about it? I can give advice, but I don't know. I'd be good at sitting there day after day with somebody constantly having an issue. Wouldn't be my thing. But maybe he might have been quite empathetic. I don't know. And therefore he's good at his job, because individually, his patients liked him very much. And he wasn't having a problem with that, but he had a problem with the private practice. He had a problem with groups of people. He said that he was paranoid around groups of people. So he had a lot of issues. It's just what finally led him to this, I think, is part of he had, I think, extreme anxiety, paranoia, and failure issues. And I think he decided to check out. And and nobody killed him except himself. And so anyway, that's my thoughts on this one. I thought it was really interesting, because until I saw this report, I was like, I don't know if I have anything to say about this show, because I couldn't come up with, I was looking at just watching the video, and I'm like, some things weren't making sense to me. And I'm like, I couldn't support the murder thing, but I didn't have any information as to why he would do something to himself until I read that very excellent report. So, yeah. Steals gold pen. Now, it wasn't a gold pen. No, it wasn't a gold pen. It was a copper pen. And I was 8 years old, and I got it from the playground in the dirt. So, but I did feel like a thief, because I didn't return it to Lost and Found. So yes, I stole that pen. Oh my goodness. Loretta says, I've known a lot of therapists in my line of work, and yes, I can be a bit cuckoo. I think it's one of those things, each profession gets a mixture of people attracted to that profession for a particular reason. Police get a lot of police people want to become police officers who want to help people. They want to fight crime. They want to get bad guys out of the community. Some just love the power and control. And there you have it. So, so sometimes you get the bad police officer because you get the guy who wants power and control. And he could be kind of like, close to psychopathic, but he passes the psych test, and then you got him as a police officer, because they're putting on a uniform and carrying a gun. And I cannot do that job. My daughter does that job. She had no problem joining the police force. And I could not work and do those things. I'm not good at that stuff. So I would never join. I wish there had been a place for profilers in law enforcement as a civilian. And when I've worked at police departments, I've worked as a civilian. I've come in and sat in there for a week, looking at all the reports and talking to all the police officers and going out and having beer with them. Everything was great as long as I wasn't myself a police officer and doing work on the streets. I'm not comfortable with that at all. So I'm a behind the scenes analyst type person. So we all have our thing, but each profession gets its type of people. So anyway, yeah, they say that's a possibility. And I would like to know mostly about when the second wife, when that insurance policy went into effect, and whether 2 years had passed and that she would get that payout regardless of if it was suicide. If 2 years hadn't passed and he was committed, and this is what happened, maybe he did want to look like murder, and maybe she wants it to look like murder, because otherwise she's not going to get the $1 million payout. Maybe he felt bad. Think about it. If he didn't want to really move to Alabama, he freaked out. He couldn't do this job. Couldn't handle it. Maybe he loved his wife and he thought, I don't want to go, but I don't want to leave her broke either. She had good money. She was retiring too, and she had really decent pension, let me tell you, compared to what I have, which I don't have a pension. And she had that. He had good money too, but whatever, she was not, I think, going to be broke. But maybe they're buying that really big house, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, it's only the two of them. They're not raising a family. Do they really need a house that size and that expensive? I think it was way over $1 million. I don't know what it was, but it was expensive. And why did they need that expensive a house? Why didn't they get ourselves downsize a little, make it not so expensive? But now she's got the $1 million. She can afford the house, And so maybe he cared about her enough not to want to leave her without something. And so he decided, I want out, but I'm not in that bad shape. Oh no, that's an idea. No, what are we going to do the GoFundMe for? What do I want? No, so yeah, so I would over and over I say I would like to know whether that when they changed that will, did that reset everything so that she had to wait 2 years and he didn't? So if anybody finds that out, let me know. Yeah, nobody gets a pension when you work independently. You just get whatever. You just go home. You have whatever you have, and then you get your crappy Social Security. And I was out of the workforce for over 20 years for taking care of my kids. So my ex's Social Security is real nice, but mine, not so great. But most welcome, Lady Jane. So anyway, thank you all for being here, and I'll see you all. I think it's going to be Thursday at 7:00 this week for the hangout. And again, if you're new to the channel, I didn't even do that crap today. If you're new to the channel, did I get distracted somewhere there? I think I did. Anyway, if you're new to the channel, I'd like to be in the chat room. Go to the link below and click on that. That's Patreon. And if you don't want to do that, hey, just subscribe to the channel. Subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Check my playlist. And I have one of you is now reading my fiction book, Only the Truth. Curious to see how you like it. It's $2.99 on Amazon, and it's a psychological mystery story and a love story. So do check that out if you need a good reading. There's something to read, and it's short, so it won't take you that long. I can't write books that take me too long because I can't do one of those 250, 500-page books. No, I do things that are quite short. So anyway, thank you for being here, everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye.